In this Tobacco University video, we're going to be exploring CBD-based hemp cannabis, giving you a little bit of background of the summary of this story of Charlotte's web, as Charlotte here is thought to be one of the great contributors to science to be able to really help support and really start a whole wave looking really at CBD for potential medical treatments. So first off, well, who is Charlotte Figi here? And we see her pictured here. She was a child with catastrophic type of epilepsy. She became a symbol of positive impacts that CBD can have on individuals, particularly young children in this example. Charlotte had Dravet syndrome, which is a rare form of epilepsy. Sadly, she did pass away in April 7th in the year 2020 at only the age of 13. Her cause of death was thought to be pneumonia, but in that short life that she did have a great contribution here to the cannabis industry. So she had that rare form of epilepsy, which is basically that Dravet syndrome, which is a kind of seizures that start very early on during the first year of life. This is kind of showing brainwave patterns of a seizure. Charlotte, at the age of 6, was having a seizure about every 30 minutes. So not only were they potentially very severe, but they were reoccurring at a very short intervals. So over 2 years, her parents, Paige and Matt, had tried many different things. They sought out a lot of advice and medical kind of advice from different doctors, and they tried a whole bunch of different things, diet alterations, acupuncture, drugs, with really no changes from any of the above. Really sadly, at the peak, Charlotte was having about 300 seizures a week, or about 2 every hour. And at certain times was not talking, not moving, and then doctors really were looking at some very experimental type options. However, half a world away, Matt, the father, was deployed to Afghanistan, and he was researching online, and he found evidence that cannabis may help reduce seizures. So it's kind of just odd that he was in Afghanistan in a lot of areas where potentially cannabis or certain forms of cannabis may have originated, just as a kind of connection there. We thank him for his service as well. And this leads us to the Stanley Brothers. So how are they involved with Charlotte's story? Well, the Stanley Brothers were marijuana growers in Colorado, and they were crossbreeding a strain of marijuana that's high in CBD and low in THC. And remember, THC is that psychoactive ingredient. Their focus was to breed down the THC and breed up in concentration the CBD. They were able to achieve a CBD level of about 21% while still maintaining a THC level under 1%. And that's a very stark difference between those two cannabinoid levels. The reason was not for recreational smoking, which is typically associated with THC, but for the potential for medical benefits. So the Stanley Brothers were really seeking the highest grade of kind of medical cannabinoids, and here looking at the CBD, breeding that up in concentration while reducing the THC levels. So we're looking at this kind of flower extraction. So the mother went to a local Denver, Colorado dispensary and purchased some high CBD variety cannabis. The owner were actually surprised of the request, since nobody really wanted it because it didn't have really any effect. That high CBD level doesn't really have that psychoactive high. That low THC and high CBD really lacks that recreational kind of psychoactive high. Thought to be potentially what was called R4 at the time, had a CBD level of 17.61% and a THC level under 1% of only 0.76%. However, it is important to note that even 0.76% by the current 2018 Farm Bill would still be considered federally illegal or marijuana at that point. And the mother, after taking the flower home, extracted the CBD from that flower, kind of extracted that particular compound. Now, the impact of the actual treatment, the day that Charlotte was given the CBD oil treatment under the tongue, she did not have a seizure that day, which continued into the night and beyond. Overall, there was a sharp decline in seizures. It was very notable and, again, very positive here. She went from having 300 seizures a week to only having 1 a week just from this CBD treatment. She went from being on a feeding tube, this is Charlotte, to eating on her own, and she started talking and also walking on her own. So this really was an eye-opening experience at large in the medical industry as well, that CBD treatment may really provide a lot of potential when we're looking at seizures in this example. So looking at, does Charlotte's Web equal CW2A? As this was according to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Joel Stanley filed a patent application in May 2018 on behalf of his company, also named Charlotte's Web. So in the public documents, Stanley describes a plant type capable of producing 6.24% CBD content and 0.27% THC content. So I know you're looking at these numbers, and from what I just previously described, say it's much lower, but keep in mind here, this is staying with or under that federal limit of 0.3% THC. So of course the CBD concentration was reduced, but still having 6.24%, it's a very high producing CBD strain here, and still staying with under that federal limit. So the patent was actually approved in July of 2019. And if you search it on the internet, you likely can probably find this patent. The new cultivar, CW2A, was asexually reproduced via stem cuttings of vegetative and or flowering plants, and cloning by the inventor and the inventor's greenhouses, nurseries, fields, and our facilities in Colorado Springs, Colorado, according to the patent. Asexual clones from the original source have been tested in greenhouses, nurseries, fields. The properties of each clone from its cultivar were found to be transmissible by such asexual reproduction. The cultivar is stable and reproduces true to type in successive generations of asexual reproduction. So this kind of just proves or shows here that it wasn't just a one-off plant, wasn't just one unique individual. It is reproducible through asexual reproduction, typically using vegetative propagation known as clones. So plant patent specifics. Well, the patent was issued by CW Holdings as a plant patent, not a broader utility patent. So we want to be careful in the definition between those two. This means it's is good only for legal protection against a competitor growing the same cultivar from clone. Even though this may be overall limited protection, it is groundbreaking in that it is the first and only plant patent for hemp cultivar issued within the United States. So this again shows you what the utility patent covers, gives you kind of some descriptions here as far as looking at, the utility patent is case dependent and kind of include all of this. Phenotypes, cultivar, just to give you that general overview here, but the plant patent specifics here. And just keep in mind that this is not a broader utility patent. We're just looking for that kind of way of protecting for a competitor growing the same clone. The value of having this patent here, what's the advantage? Why would go through this process? The patent doesn't prevent others from developing their own strain of similar characteristics, so that's an important note. The goal from the breeder standpoint, though, is to protect the strain you have put time into and resources into developing, protect your specific strain here. The patent does not prevent a competition in general, but can provide an advantage in the market. So that's why it's advantageous for them to go through and have that patent for their plant. The specifics of Charlotte's Web. So it is a sativa-based strain with a stated 13% CBD. However, the patent does state officially 6.24% CBD and that THC below that 0.3%. These unique and proprietary genetics are used by Charlotte's Web, the company, to create extracts for a variety of health and wellness products. Contrary to popular belief, Charlotte's Web products are hemp-derived and are non-intoxicating. They lack any strong levels of THC. New consumers should consult their doctor with any medical concerns, but this, I felt important to kind of address this story. It did get national publication and really gave cannabis a really kind of ideas in the market to allow doctors to even look at it further and really to investigate the CBD for its potential medical benefits. And Charlotte, again, sadly in her short life there, was able really to kind of radically change the cannabis industry and people's perceptions of cannabis, which has led to hopefully continuation for it to be used and to help other individuals going forward.